Hi everyone, welcome to Poetry and Talk. If you're new to us, Poetry and Talk is a new online interviewing platform for poets to share their poetry, background, and inspiration. We are an open platform and we honor each poet's journey. We'd like to ask you to stay connected with us on our social media. We have currently over 30 poet interviews for you to watch and to be inspired from. And you can stay connected with us on our Facebook page, Poetry and Talk, and you can stay connected with us on our YouTube channel as well. On our YouTube channel, I've created a couple playlists to organize the poet interviews that we have. One of them is Poetry and Healing. We've had many guest poets very candidly share personal challenges that they've experienced and how poetry has been instrumental in their healing. So if you'd like to check out that playlist, just go on our YouTube channel. A few other playlists that I've created is the creative process and the creative flow. So if you're into that, you could check out that playlist. And if you're into current affairs, then you can check out the poetry and current affairs playlist and find out what poets are writing about and what they're targeting about. So we hope you'll stay connected with us. We're very grateful that you're watching today. And I'm also very excited because we have our first guest poet having a return. This is her second time being on Poetry and Talk. We had a poet interview in early November, and we'll be catching up with her and finding out all about her book. So we do invite any poets that have had prior poet interviews with us to stay connected with us and schedule another poet interview. Just shoot out an email to us at poetryandtalk@gmail.com. And any other poets interested in having a poet interview with us, again, shoot out an email to us. I'm Leslie Sue, the host for Poetry and Talk. Again, thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year. We hope it's a great year for everyone. I'd like to welcome for the second time, Jessi Hersey. Jessi, welcome.
Thanks for having me here. Feels good to be back. I actually took a different route on my first choice of poetry since I have, at least right now, the author copy of my poetry book.
Mm-hmm.
I decided I'm going to read, which my artist did a beautiful job of drawing kind of the picture. You can see it.
Yes.
Painted that and drew it. This poem's called Heaven, and I wrote it when I was 12 years old. I tried reading a little bit of it to myself beforehand so I could remember fully what inspired me to write it. And I know at this time, just equality was a big thing in my head and wanting to feel equal to everyone. So that's where kind of heaven came from. And I'll just read it now. Heaven must be a wonderful place where people come from every race, where there are people of every face. God brings his hand down to bring somebody new to heaven. God loves everybody. It does not matter how you look or from where you came, because in God's eyes, we are all the same.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And such a beautiful message. Share with us because, wow, you were 12 when you wrote that and you were focusing on equality and kind of feeling that the oneness and unity and whatnot. But in your own words, share with us a little bit more insight into that poem, if you would, please, Jessi.
Well, being, like I said in our first interview, a child of special education, you tend to be outcasted like automatically. And I know at that time, I just really wanted to fit in and do what everyone else is doing. I know at that time, everyone was with boyfriends and girlfriends. I wasn't, but everyone else was. So that probably helped pull in that. And knowing myself, something big would have had to happen, which I honestly don't remember what big thing happened for me to write that poem. But I know the feeling of just feeling left out. And since at that time, which one half of my family is like Christian/Catholic. And then if you go to my dad's side, they're not religious at all. And just so everyone knows, this is a spiritual book, not a religious book in any sense. At that time, we'd go to church pretty much every Sunday. So I know one of the topics at that time was heaven. And since that question just kept on popping up in my head of whether it exists or not, and if it does, what would it be like? And I kind of took from that idea and my empty feeling of being left out and feeling like I couldn't be a part of what everyone else was a part of. I kind of wrote down what I had learned in church in a sense too. And that helped kind of shape the poem as it is. And I know church sometimes inspired me to write a lot of my poems too when I was younger, and just going to school every day too. But I wanted to send out a message I couldn't convey at the time fully or express it. So I tried to, I think that was my first rhyme poem too, when I was little. I don't know though, might be. But I just wanted a poem that worked and that someone could relate to. And it was a way for me to better understand things, what I was going through, what I was being taught, what I was seeing and feeling, and just having someone listen to. My mom was the first one that got to hear that poem. And then I put it away a long, long time, and then I reshared it with someone, and it got a love. So I thought that was a good sign. So I added it right away to my poetry book because I had lost it, and I found my old journals and found a lot of my old writing, which some of that is put in this poem. My next poetry book will have some of the poems that I didn't put in this one, but this is one from 1999 it was written in.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about, Jessi, the topic, heaven. And that's so beautiful, and it says so much. And you're kind of linking up a place where, as you stated in your poem, that it is like a place of unity. It's a place where all is equal. There is not this differentiation. There is no judgment. There is no, outer appearances or worldly gains or riches or successes and whatnot, or labels. That they're not. Those aren't even of concern. That they don't exist.
Yeah.
So do you feel that because you chose this topic and it was a way for you to, as you said, kind of like understand yourself and kind of deal with these feelings of not fitting in and feeling left out, that bridging that gap, so to speak, kind of like somehow experiencing some type of heaven or oneness, like while here would help with your personal healing, in addition to, as you mentioned, to help others as well?
I feel since I was young when I wrote that, just, yeah, it would be nice if we did have that here, but there's a lot as human beings we all have to work through, period, to get there. Mm-hmm. But I do believe strongly someday we will get there. It's just a matter of, I guess, trusting everything as you see it. Like, I have a lot of poems in here and just trusting the process. And I personally do believe in God, the universe, anything that falls in that realm, because God, the universe, same person, same thing. Doesn't matter what you call that. It can be Allah, it can be anything, because we all technically are praising or believing in, even if you don't believe in anything, you technically do. Because if you believe in yourself, you believe in something. Mm-hmm. Or if you believe in another person, you're believing in something. Mm-hmm. So when I hear someone say, I don't believe in anything, I don't believe that for a second, because that's just sad. And I don't really feel that's a truth in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought up a great point about trusting the process. So I'm glad that you shared that with us, Jessi. So talk to us a little bit more about poetry and what's going on with you currently.
Currently, the poetry's going pretty well. I have my first 4 reviews, which is nice. And if anyone who has purchased the book or is thinking about purchasing this book.
Love the image on the front.
Thank you. Please review the book. It helps an author and it helps get the book further out there. And I wrote this book for healing purposes for anyone to read. That's why I wrote about even my darkest days of suicidal thoughts. I didn't put all the poems in there of that, but maybe the next one will have a little more of it. But I do enough in here that there's like 50% of it's light, 50% of it's dark. So there's anything to relate to. I've heard from some of the people that have reviewed my book, and I really appreciate what one person told me. She said that she could relate to a lot of the feelings in it that I wrote about, and a lot of the healing that I went through, because I even talk about healing just for me, healing wise. And just getting this book out was very healing for me alone. But that's also why I wanted to get it out, so people could have that opportunity. And my artist, I like what she did, because technically, if you see any of my social media pages, you'll see me in this shirt, to be kind,
Mm-hmm.
and doing that same pose, which Jessica Fairbairn did the picture of that. The artist took that picture and she made it into this, but she saw light. Because if you compare the original photo to what she painted and drew, this is much brighter and lighter. It's really cool. Because I just asked her to copy and do what she sees, just like she did with the actual painting of heaven. So I only chose the most prevalent poems that impacted people, like beauty. My mom, that impacted her because I think I wrote it when I was 6 or 7. I don't know. That really impacted my mom a lot. So I decided to put it in the book because she still talks about it today, so many years later. And a lot of the poems that I put in here, and the 5 poems I chose specifically for the artist to do paintings / drawings of whatever she saw. It was all her. Those ones are the ones literally that are most relevant, the ones that made the biggest impact in people's lives that I've heard from, whether it's my mom, a friend, a stranger. I put it in there, and I hoped that it will continue having that effect.
Mm-hmm. It seems like early on, 6 and 7 is quite a young age to, be writing poetry. And then, at 12, the poem that you opened up with. So you have a lot of like deep insight and insight into your feelings. Can you just take us to how poetry actually began for you? Like when you actually picked up a pen or pencil and you started to write?
I started doing it honestly in class when I wasn't paying attention when I should have been. I just grabbed a pencil and paper, and if I was feeling something like really upset or sad, or it was rarely happy when I was little, but if it was happy, then I would write it down there too. And I just wrote down thoughts, and people still give me journals today. I literally use a journal to not just write poetry. I write my thoughts that do become poems sometimes, or I write thoughts that become books and stories. But I just use whatever I have and I write,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what kind of led to that
So
poetry.
right, yes. So, Jessi, you kind of naturally gravitated towards it. You would feel things, and then you saw there was some type of connection and a release, and then you just kept kind of writing. So it seems like it was just sort of a natural kind of organic development.
Yes, it was, and it surprised my mom too, that I could write and think so deeply too, at a young age, since I was already talking and writing like an adult. Well, not necessarily talking. I was really quiet. I didn't talk that much. I'd say I talk more in my adulthood, and I'm way more open than I was when I was younger. But yeah, that gave me kind of that outlet to really express myself and allow myself to be as quiet as I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the title of the book, because you are using the word faith and you kind of have touched upon it. But the title of a book kind of sets the tone or the pace for the contents, kind of giving the reader, the listener, the viewer kind of an idea of what's inside. If you don't mind, Jessi, can you kind of share a little bit more about faith and poetry and how they're intertwined for you?
Faith, I didn't learn this until recently, but faith with spirituality, poetry is spiritual. I didn't know it was that until one day I typed in, is poetry spiritual? And a bunch of, not websites, but first a definition of poetry came up, and then an explanation. Some people did blog posts, but it was a couple of sources that were perfect for this that kind of proved to me my poetry, the theme of it, at least the faith of believing in what you don't see, because you don't see God. Well, you do look at the universe, but you don't necessarily see how it moves. You don't see Allah. You don't see, there's a lot of things you don't see. Like if you randomly are getting a raise, you're not going to see when that happens until you receive a phone call or something like that. Or if someone is backstabbing you, you don't see that. You get it from someone else, but you don't see it. Faith is believing in what you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And faith, just believing in, like when I brought up the process. So my journey back to faith, that's the second part of my title, because it is a journey. I did turn my back on no longer believing in what you don't see, because I was mad at, I guess, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. I was mad at that. So I, for a couple years, like not couple, I guess 5 years or more, I kept my back turned. And pretty much if people asked me, I said I didn't believe in anything. So that was a lie. I believed in other people. I didn't believe in myself at the time, but I believed in other people. And it took me a while. It was actually just meeting someone that I had feelings for that really brought me back to faith. And moving somewhere I never thought I would move to really brought me back to believing in what you don't see, since I did survive thanks to a friend that was out there. And that was my only contact, since at that time I had lost contact with everyone. It really brought me back fully to faith. It took a long journey and a lot of ups and downs, and even forgiving my father was in there too. Now him and I have a great relationship. I love him very much. Yeah, there was a lot just to come back to this point. And I put all those feelings into this poetry, into the book itself. And like Lit Soul, the very first part, since I am sharing my heart and soul in it, and lit, since I love dancing, everyone says it's totally lit. You're totally lit. That's a good thing, that you're good at something, or you're on fire, which is another good thing to say when you dance, because I'm a huge raver, so that's where lit came from. But soul is because I literally am giving you all of me in this. And I originally didn't plan to do a second book, but since I started writing more poetry as of lately, I am going to have a second one out eventually. I don't know when, but this is the first of maybe many to come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the faith has been basically kind of like the fire or the fuel to keep you going, and kind of like like a trust in the unseen, and kind of being able to kind of come to terms with everything that you've experienced, and just kind of, kind of bare your soul, so to speak, and just kind of trust, as you had said earlier, in the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And learning that a lot of things, like especially COVID, I know a lot of people have found this, well, it has been hard. I won't go over that of going, it hasn't been hard, but there's been a lot of good that's come out of it too. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect to be able to get my poetry book out. I didn't expect to have the 4 reviews that I'm thankful for right now. I didn't expect people that have been supporting me with my poetry book, and still are. I didn't expect that. I didn't know the support that I had around me. And sometimes you don't see it. You just have to trust it without seeing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the poetry has really been almost like Jessi accepting herself. Do you kind of feel that as well?
Yes, fully. And me coming out as being who I truly am, because even in the thank you page, I explained some of my sexuality, because I did do an earlier poetry book that I don't count as me at all. And it did have the lit soul part to it. but this one is truly me. I explain about my sexuality of being bisexual, because in the first one I was a lesbian, but that's not true. Yes, I am more attracted to women, but I'm just more of honoring who I am too in the story and hoping to heal others if they choose to, or they can just read it, leave a review, whether they like it or not, like the book. I just really wanted to help others, and just hearing the feedback I've heard since I was little, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore, because that's not fair to potentially helping others that are open to it and that love reading it. Like everyone that's been getting the book, since it's an easy read, you can read it in a day. It's 110 pages, and each poem is varying in its, I guess, page numbers. Beauty is the longest, 2 pages, but other than that, they're pretty short and to the point. But yeah.
So it's beautiful. You have a message, Jessi. At least one of them is basically just kind of like honoring your own journey and being very frank and truthful, because you've really gone within yourself, is what I'm getting, and really come to terms with everything, and really embracing all of it, the darkness, different experiences that you've had, overcoming different challenges, and then kind of using poetry as a way for it to be healing for you and for others as well.
Yes, very true.
Tell us some other things about the book as well. Is there another poem that you'd like to read so we could get another feel for it?
Sure. I'll just do random page and see what I land on.
Sure.
Okay. That's a funny one that I landed on. This one I wrote, geez, I think I was 14 then. 2002, January 2002. A lot of them have dates. The title of it is When. Camera issues. Okay. When will the tears of fear and sadness fade away? When will we see the brightness of the day? And when will we sing a new song? Shall we spend our lives in sorrow instead of with a heart filled with loads of happiness? Can we ever see the one star that comes falling and calling to give us forgiveness and love? A star that conquers our hopes and dreams and helps us believe in who we are. We are filled with the question of when. But the star looks and echoes to us, it is now.
That's beautiful. I love, Jessi, how you always bring us back to the heart. You bring us back to an openness. You bring us back to kind of like an ethereal sense. Like, first it was heaven, and there's kind of now the emphasis, on the star. Share with us a little bit about this poem, if you would, please.
I know that came from one of my random thoughts, that poem originally, that I had written about since I think I was learning about astrology then. No. Yeah, it was astrology in class. And I just thought of the star kind of being human and replying back. And I was writing it at the time because I was trying to get myself to open up more and be more vulnerable with people and allow myself to make more friends than the couple that I had and the couple that I didn't have anymore. It's just a way to cope with everything happening around me. And the star, since, when you're little, you get stars if you do really well, also falls into that. Kind of just having a conversation with the star with the good job kind of helped me get clearer on things and clearer on, okay, so I'm here right now in my life, which was at that time, it just felt like to me lost friends and just gained back one friend. That was a new person who moved from somewhere. And it was my way of coping and trying to figure out, okay, then when do I start really being surrounded by more people, making more friends, it really was coming from a place of I wanted more friends. I actually have a poem called Friendship in here too, but that actually is talking about a friend from my past, which her and I are still in contact. Yeah, that's kind of where the star idea came from.
That's beautiful insight. So thank you for sharing that. I have a question for you. Well, first of all, you said you wrote that at 12.
I think so. Well, it says 2002, so it might have been like 13 or 14.
Okay, about 14. Okay, again, a lot of, deep insight, at quite a young age. But I have a question for you. And again, at a young age, you were really kind of evaluating a lot of things going on with you. And you were kind of like almost having, like you were saying, a conversation with the star. You kind of had a conversation with Jessi, and you were like, okay, these are some things that are going on. These are some ways that I'm feeling. And then you kind of looked past that in a sense, and you said, okay, what would bring me to the point where I'm not experiencing these things? So you had kind of like an inner drive, so to speak, to, as you said, like make new friends, kind of like, break into the unknown, kind of like go out into new territory, which I'm sure was kind of like, can be frightening, a little scary at any age. So my question for you is, where did that drive come from? And do you have any advice for someone who, poet, non-poet, who may be experiencing some of these things, but maybe gets a little bit more lost in that whole swamp of, emotions and I guess if you want to say like, kind of lower level things, and they don't kind of break out of it. And maybe they don't have that fire or that drive to at least say, okay, I'm going to explore some unknown territory. I don't know if it's what's going to happen in this case. Am I going to make new friends? Am I going to kind of, get out of my shell a little bit? Am I going to, kind of get over some of these things? But you did. And I think that is to be noted. And I think that is to be respected. So given all that, do you have any advice for someone who might be in that situation, and to kind of give them a little bit of a push to kind of like, hey, go ahead?
Well, my advice is, one, don't push yourself because that's not good to do to yourself. That it's safe, even if it doesn't seem like it. It's safe to put yourself out there. It's safe to go, hi, my name is, or you can start really, really simple, because there is oddly a lot of people I've had reach outs from people that don't even know the basics of just going, hi, I'm Jessi. I like to write. What about you? That's a good basic. Or how are you today? It's a basic to just stepping into the unknown. If it's scary going fully vulnerable, I don't blame you. You don't have to. You get haters and lovers either way on that. And you can choose to take it or not. I am personally to the point in my life where I don't care. Haters are going to hate and they can go do their thing. But the lovers, you can't help but to appreciate. And you can find the good within there when you ignore the hate and really take on the lovers and continue putting yourself out there. You don't have to go full blown. That's a process in itself. You can just take baby steps, and each baby step will lead you to something higher. Because with me, I had to do baby steps too. My poetry shows you. I even have like poems on the unknown. It kind of shows my steps out into the way I am today with the more current poems. One of my reviewers actually compared my childhood poem to my adult poem, which I loved. And he wrote saying my adult poem is more simplistic compared to my childhood poetry, which is a compliment, and I appreciate that. So that even shows. So I was more complex in my train of thought as a child, but now I'm more simple in my train of thought, which is good, because then I'm not as in my head. And when you're in your head, it's harder to step into that unknown. And it's scarier to see where you're going to head with certain things. But knowing you're always safe and you're always guarded, even if you can't see that. I had my proof in Florida when I was afraid I was going to be evicted from my house. And like I brought up that friend that just happened to be there. Literally, our first conversation was me reaching out to her saying, hey, can I come stay with you? And oh, by the way, I don't have a car. I didn't have a car for a whole year out there. And she drove all the way from where she was, which was pretty much next to Disney World, all the way to Clearwater, picked me up and let me stay with her at night. And she also took me to my interview too. She was trying to get me a job at the time. Things didn't work out, but everything worked out for the best. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for her. And that's even proof why I tell this story, proof of even as you step into the unknown, because I would have never, ever in the past asked for help, or let alone talked to someone I hadn't talked to in years going, hey, can I stay with you? Here's my situation. I never expected to do that, but I did that. And it's just really trusting what you don't see. And that can be so scary. I understand that, fully understand that. But once you're through that scary feeling, you make it on the other side, and the other side is always good. But you have to first get through that, and everyone's process is different. And like I said, don't push yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, Jessi, and that's really good advice. So I appreciate you sharing that. I have a question. Now, the two poems that you read, you were young, about like 12 and then 14. When you look back on those and you read them now, do you have a different experience? What is kind of going on within you when you read those?
Always my first reaction is I wrote that. That's always been my reaction of my poetry, especially from when I was younger. And then comes the, yeah, I wrote that. And then I get to go back to those feelings for a split second, or when I'm reading it right here and now, I get to go back to those feelings. And personally, the heaven feeling one feels better than the when feeling one. But going back to those feelings kind of brings back me growing up, and just the things I was going through, and seeing how much I've grown now makes me very thankful, and seeing how open I am now, and that I can truly help people in the way that I was doing it the wrong way when I was little. That's a little harsh to say, but it's true. I was doing it the wrong way when I was little, but it was the only way I knew how. And by just forgiving myself there and knowing I was learning helps, even just reading the poetry. Like I said, it was healing for me, just getting this book out. But I definitely want it to do well, because every poet wants their work to do well. And to me, it's important to do well, because I want to continue helping others that go through and feel these same exact things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think it's just, you know, a note of, you know, kudos with so much that you've overcome and understood. It's a process, you know, it's continual. And it's just so beautiful how, you know, you're reaching out to others, you know, to help them as well, on their journey, and, you know, using your poetry as a main voice. We have a little bit more time here, Jessi. What else would you like to share with us, about what's going on, currently, with maybe some topics, also with your book? And what closing comments would you like to leave us with, Jessi?
Well, currently in February, I have a really cool interview for the UK for a radio talk show, and we'll be talking about my poetry book. I can't think of the name. Oh, it's BuzzFeed, something like Buzz. And if you guys take a listen, anyone in the UK, if you're watching this, maybe heard of him. Wayne Clark is the guy that talks and does it. And I have a lot of other interviews coming up for my poetry book too. You guys watch for that. And I will keep you guys up to date when the second one comes out. And I hope that anything I said resonates or makes you feel good, and that maybe me keeping the root off down here makes you laugh. Yeah, that's really all I have.
Well, we wish you a lot of success with your book. I love the poems that you read. You know, your message, and all that it's brought to you. I hope it's a huge success for you. Let us know, Jessi, how we can stay in touch with you, please, and how we can get a hold of your book.
Oh, if you just go on Amazon, you can purchase the book, and it will soon be in other places, which I'll keep you up to date with that. And if you want to stay up to date with the book itself, you just go to @litsoul77 and you'll get directed to the Facebook page, because right now there's only a Facebook page for the book, and this And you can, if you're into or thinking about publishing a book and are a poet, you can also check out my services at www.oneness.love.com. I have coaching, I have publishing, and then I have classes too.
Mm-hmm. You've got a lot going on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Jessi, it was so awesome to reconnect with you and find out about your book and just to see you and hear you and you know the beautiful message that you have. Thank you so much for being our guest poet today, Jessi.
Thanks so much for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, much success with your book and with everything else and, you know, in 2021. So stay connected with us. Let us know what's going on and, you know, keep us posted on, you know, the other book that you mentioned that would be coming out when it does.
I definitely will.
Thank you, Jessi. Thank you, everyone, for watching Poetry and Talk. We're grateful for the time that you take to watch and stay connected with us. And again, you can find us on Facebook, Poetry and Talk, and on YouTube, Poetry and Talk. And we'll talk soon on the next Poetry and Talk. Until then, be well and be blessed. Thank you again, Jessi. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Looks like the recording.